high fructose rich, you have way too much sugar for the body to try to handle at any time. And the problem with that, quite simply, is that when you have too much sugar and the body cannot regulate it and take it in and ingest it, it floats around in the bloodstream ready to feed and does feed microbes and cancer. So it actually grows those type of problems for us.
What do you think about coffee as far as caffeine?
Well, there are two problems with coffee, and the first one everyone knows about, which is caffeine. And caffeine has a major history and bad history. Number two is the acidity. And I would probably say the acidity in coffee, be it decaffeinated and organic or not, is your biggest culprit, because it breaks down the neurological system, the sheathing around the neurological system. If you look at the caffeine as well as the acidity, if one drinks only 2 cups of coffee a day, the chances of breast cancer go up several times, pancreatic cancer go up several times, and this is well documented, but nobody ever talks about these things. And it's also something that, because it breaks down the sheathing around the neurological system, creates hyperactivity in people. I mean, it's pretty bad today when you consider that people not too many years ago, maybe 1 or 2 generations ago, used to take little coffee cups that had a few ounces in it. Today, the average person's taking, half a quart of coffee once or twice a day. This is just outrageous, and it's harmful.
How effective are the sprouts that you can buy in health food stores that are supposedly organically grown? How effective are those compared to the ones that you would grow at home? And if you can't grow them at home, what are the other alternatives?
Well, I would tell you that any certified organic sprout that you would buy is certainly good for you. It's just you being astute enough or perceptive enough to see if that sprout is fresh. And what I always suggest for people in your produce markets and in your health stores is ask which day it's delivered, and either that day or the day after, you go and collect the sprouts. Sprouts do not go bad very easily. It takes a long time for a sprout to go bad, and if it's refrigerated correctly, it will not happen. But on the other hand, look out for those things, become sensitive to what they look like and they smell like, etc. The real problem I see with purchasing is you're paying dozens and dozens and dozens of times more money than is necessary. I mean, to grow sprouts costs pennies, and what I love about sprouting is I can go into the poorest regions of the world and speak to people about sprouting, and every single person can afford it. It's very inexpensive. So that would be my real preference. And the therapeutic value that one has in growing their own food and getting your family involved in that. It's very exciting, besides being less expensive and certainly healthy, where you have complete control over it.
I have a friend who is considering silicone implants, and her argument is that they are now containing water rather than silicone.
Yes.
What effect does it have on the immune system? And once they're in place, can the immune system be rebuilt?
Well, this is a very important question you're asking. I have strong opinions on this, being the father of 2 young ladies and working with women over the last 35 years. I think that we've, unfortunately, stereotypically made women breast. What men look for in women are breasts. And what the poor women who feel insecure do is place breasts there thinking it's going to change their self-esteem. Now, I don't have the time to answer this question as widely as I should or could, but I can say to you that I know hundreds of women who had these implants placed in them that now they either have chronic fatigue syndrome or breast cancer. There have been numbers of women who have come here several times who now have a new relationship or a husband who's a shallow man, obviously, and says, I like you better if you go and put breast implants in. And actually they did it, and they show up here a year or 2 years later with cancer. Now, to me, this is sickening. And how the medical profession and cosmetic surgery industry still allows this to happen is appalling to me. Because anyone who uses just a little bit of common sense knows from this story what I'm going to tell you. If you have a splinter in your finger, what is it that pushes that splinter out and keeps you from dying from that infection? It's your immune system. And if you put 2 large objects in the body, not a splinter, a small splinter, that are literally going to be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to be fought with your immune system, you are now going to weaken your overall health and make yourself vulnerable to every single disease that you can possibly imagine. And any doctor and any research institution and any government that would tell you that that's not true are lying. It's that simple. So these are highly dangerous. If women feel that insecure, there are bras that are padded and other things that they can do. You don't have to go to that extreme. And if you have a man, listen women very closely, that tells you that you require that before he loves you enough, dump him and get a man who's a good man. It's that simple.
I actually have two questions. The first one is about gluten. I wonder if you could talk a little about that. I know the sprouting process does something to transform it, but if someone has celiac disease and they're trying to avoid gluten, can they use those foods?
Well, yes, and let's talk a little bit about celiac disease. The Irish people, English people, and German people listening all know about celiac disease because it's inherent almost in those cultures. But now the recent research shows that here in North America, that celiac is growing by 10 to 20% a year in certain regions of the country. And these are allergies to wheat and anything made from wheat. And boy, this is a big problem. If you look at the food chain out there, practically everything made that's processed has wheat in it. And it's hard to stay away from. Here are the good bits of information and good news about it. That when you germinate a seed, a grain that has gluten, such as wheat, it breaks down the carbohydrate to a simple sugar. And in doing so, it takes away the gluten factor. So 97% of the people that are then allergic to wheat or have celiac disease are no longer allergic to sprouted wheat. Okay? If you had celiac disease, I would also suggest using spelt and kamut. These are both very primitive form, practically never hybrid or not hybrid types of wheats. And so that alone takes away a lot of the wheat allergies, celiac disease, gluten factor, etc. Now, who are the 3% of the people? Are they allergic to the gluten? And the answer is no. That 3%, over the years we've observed, we understand that there are numbers of different factors and numbers of different reasons that they're still allergic to something within the wheat, but it's not the gluten factor. So just by germination, you remedy that, and you'll no longer have celiac reaction to wheat. But again, most products, even in the health store, have wheat in it, and that's what you have to be concerned about.
The other question I had, it seems like so many people have parasites now, and I'm wondering if that's something new or if people have always had a lot of parasites and what may be causing it.
Very good question. We estimate here from all the blood profiles and diagnostic work that we do that about 70% of the population conservatively have parasites. Now, in countries that are quite industrial and quite economically sound, we have this belief system that we do not have parasites, that it's countries that are less clean and countries that are more impoverished that have it. Well, I'm here to tell you that every major metropolitan city in the world, the people are plagued with parasites, and that number of 70% with the general population goes up to practically 100%. I had an office in New York City, and for 2 years practiced with my partner, a physician. We didn't find New York City residents without parasites. And so that alone brings us into the first part of why we get it. Close proximity, touching, door handles, touching one another, somebody sneezing, using public restrooms, children coming to your house. How many of you know that it's estimated that 8 out of 10 of our children in Western Europe and the United States have pinworms below 16 years old? So you start to understand how easy it is to contract it. You can also not only get parasites through consuming food with parasites in it. The worst foods, obviously, are animal-based foods. Any meats, fish are the most notorious. Even after cooking fish, they find that there's parasites and amoebas in most cases. But worse than that, you can get parasites by breathing the egg that's floating in the air after it's dried. You know, it's a fairly easy thing. Water is number one, overwhelmingly, worldwide. Many of the sicknesses of people that live in countries that are not as sanitary are water-based parasitic activity. But that's not only isolated to those countries, it's everywhere. Now, why it's more so today and more problematic today than before is a quite simple answer. Your immune system is weaker. So everyone has always had the exposure to parasites from the first humans that have ever lived, because parasites are part and parcel to our environment, natural environment. But the difference is that our immune systems were able to stop them at the gate. Now our immune systems are so compromised and weakened that we actually do not stop them, and they perpetuate and cause all kinds of problems. Lastly, on this question, I have to say to you that there's a school of thought now that goes to the extreme, that says that every disease known to man comes from a parasite. And with all due respect, the people that have this philosophy are alarmist and have at least awakened those places in the world that in the past we didn't believe we had parasites, but do not believe that every single disease has direct relation to. What I will say is that if you compromise the immune system further by having parasites, you're more vulnerable to disease. But it's not going to cause every disease known to man.
Is there research on the Living Foods program as it affects sexual vitality?
Absolutely. And one of the things that we hear about every day in our world is how people are losing sexual drive. And it's happening at a much younger age. Statistically, in North America now, 40-year-old men, 50% have a hard time performing. We're talking about 40-year-old young men. One half of that population have a hard time performing. With women, it's estimated, because they peak at a later age in their 40s, the late 30s and early 40s, that it's about 1/3 are having a hard time. And Viagra has been the most popular pharmaceutical drug that's ever been put out on the marketplace, and there's a good reason for that. Now, what is it about this diet that improves sexual vitality and interest and childbearing and everything else that has to do with that department? What this does is it cleans up the body, reduces the fat, increases the oxygen, and gives your body a stronger and greater ability to develop white blood cells. Ejaculation happens to be millions and millions and millions of white blood cells that have to be replenished, hopefully from a healthy body. If one doesn't have a nourished, healthy, and strong body, then we're going to reduce the sperm possibility or the sperm count. And that's why men suffered at a much greater rate than women. The other thing that we have going on is chemicals, environmental estrogens. And environmental estrogens that are caused from everything from fluorides in our water, which are highly dangerous and causing all other diseases that you can imagine, down to creating sterility and lack of interest. These actually permeate and penetrate the brain function and cross-wire and cross-circuit the part of the brain that creates romantic ideologies and thoughts. And so these chemicals, pesticides included, are creating all kinds of psychological disorder with it. On the other hand, when you take ecoestrogens, there are estrogens. And if men eat too many estrogens, they start to think in a totally different way, not as much masculine, but more feminine than they would have if they're not taking estrogen. It doesn't work the same on women. If women, in fact, take too many estrogens, it creates greater vulnerability to mutagenic diseases, but also does not make them more feminine, but makes them more masculine, which is interesting. Because then their body overcompensates and starts to create more testosterone. So we're starting to see a whole lot of role changing going on, a lot more masculinity in the maternal world, in the feminine, and a femininity in the masculine world. And this is really caused from that. We, of course, on this program get rid of all pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, tell you to wear natural fiber clothes, like cottons and wools and silks and hemp, even better, and linen and organic cotton. All our undergarments should be 100% organic cotton, and when possible, we should be using organic cotton clothes, hemp organic clothes, and all of this is going to help you. Your living environment should not have chemicals in it. All the cleaning products you're using should be organic products, and out in your yard, you shouldn't be having sprays go in, but use organic methodologies. All of this is going to be helpful in sexual vitality. And there's no good reason, and we've seen it in thousands of cases, why people could not be active well into their life. And that's the way it was, and that's the way it is today in primitive culture, and that's the way it is with every single person who lives on the Living Food program long enough. Well, thanks for coming today.
Hippocrates is a 501c3 nonprofit educational organization. Our lifelong mission is to educate people on how to live a healthy lifestyle. Whether you are an alumnus watching this program for a review or seeing our work for the first time via these programs, we hope you will learn, grow, heal, and live to your highest potential. If we can assist you to do so, it is our honor, our privilege, and the reason we are here.